Hello from a mosquito filled yet incredibly beautiful evening in Kampala. My name is Akshay and I co convene the Unruly Politics module, also known as SOUR, or the Spring of Unruly Reading. I'm really sorry to not be there at the Options Fair in person, so I thought I'd make a little video clip to tell you all a little bit about the course. To begin with, let me tell you a little bit about what Unruly Politics means to me. To me, unruly politics is kind of the insistence on new languages of politics. Let me give you an example. In the UK, there's this protest group called the Clown Army, which is a group of people who are not acting as clowns, but they are clowns. You'll never see them out of character. And this group of people always place themselves between the aggressive riot police with their shields and the protesters. Now, often the riot police will surround and trap or kettle in the protesters and keep us there for several hours until the tensions rise, and basically waiting for a moment of violence, which will then give them the legitimacy to clear people out and perform their own violence. So in this kind of situation, Jamie Heckert gives us a little story of when the head of police takes aside the general of the Clown Army. You have a general because it is an army, and says, "Could I have a serious word?" And the clown thinks for a moment and says, "Encyclopedia. Is that a serious word?" Now, there's something very interesting happening here. The state is saying, "I'm willing to negotiate. But if you want to negotiate with me, you have to speak my language. You have to speak a serious word." What the clown is doing is not turning around and walking away. The clown says, "I will engage with you, but I insist on speaking my own language." We insist on a new language of politics itself. So we're looking at a situation where there's an insistence on new grammars or new ways of doing politics, which go beyond, which exceed the way in which politics has been defined by those in power. Politics as defined by those who are in a position to say what is politics and what is not. So to me, that lies at the core of unruly politics. So if you look at Tahrir Square, which wasn't a revolution in the classical sense of being preceded by class consciousness and class identity, etc., etc., what was powerful about that? What was powerful was that Mubarak did not have a leadership to negotiate with or eliminate, or a list of demands to negotiate. His negotiation was with each and every person in Tahrir for those 18 days. There was simply no language in the realm of politics for that negotiation. That's what made it unruly. That's what made it radical, and that's what made it powerful. We're looking at similar kinds of ruptures and these attempts by people, by collectives. We're looking at new forms of collective action, which are insisting on these new ways of doing politics, new ways of imagining the political imaginary itself. We're looking at something quite radical happening to those relationships of governance, of citizenship, etc. And that is what unruly politics, this unruly politics thinking is trying to do. Now, very briefly to tell you about the course. We've run this course, we've actually experimented with this course for 2 years. We taught it as an informal course, which was not recognized by the university at that point. And then last year, finally, we taught it as a formal course. So we've had some time to develop it, and it's always been kind of a participatory process with the people involved, and we've always had several people auditing it or coming in for particular sessions, etc. What we've tried to do with the course is bring together quite complex theoretical offerings and philosophical offerings that are coming up from the realms of politics, political science, anthropology, sociology, and aesthetics, a range of different disciplines, people who are thinking about power and politics. So we've brought together theoretical approaches, ranging from the more well-established in development names like Tilly and Taro, to Partho Chatterjee's notion of civil society and political society, going to E.P. Thompson and moral economy, looking at those kinds of things, all the way to Rancière, who's looking at aesthetics, as politics as aesthetics, or looking at Slavoj Žižek, who several of you all have probably seen as as the what do they call him, the Borat of philosophy, looking at that at the Maoist Marxist French philosopher Alain Badiou and his notion of the event, which is a rupture, a rupture in the relationship between the world and the way we see the world, right? A certain rupture in which we glimpse a truth of power and then establish a relationship to it. So events like Tahrir, etc., are these, we're using Badiou's notion of event to try and understand the dynamics of that and the implications of that. Similarly, we're looking at technology. We're looking at the use of ICTs in political action. What does it mean in terms of the way we imagine politics? And we're not looking simply at governance and the ability of people to complain about corruption using their phones, etc., etc. There's something far more radical about the way in which technology is coming into play in these political, in unruly politics. Then we're looking at biopolitics, the use of the body. For example, the Arab Spring was what sparked it off was a vegetable vendor on the streets of Tunisia immolating himself, demonstrating the way in which the absolute abjection of the human body, right? The ways in which people are using their bodies, and this question of life, meaningful life and death in politics, in unruly politics. So there's a range of different theoretical things that we're bringing together. And what is interesting is that we're trying to put that together, or we have put that together with a very practical side. So if you look at the mode of assessment, you have a theoretical essay where each person engages with one theory or one theoretical approach deeply. And then you have a continuous process of blogging. So a collective effort at maintaining a blog, right? And reflecting on the range of things that are happening around the world, reflecting on the other things that you're reading at IDS, etc. It was an extremely exciting blog last year, which we'll share with you. And finally, and this was the most effective part of the assessment structure, was 30% is put aside for a collective group project or collective action, where you give the opportunity to experiment with modes of collective action, with unruly politics, to be unruly and to learn from that experience what it means to be political, what it means to do politics, what it means to do politics together, how dynamics work in a group when you're talking or when you're actually doing politics, and to be able to do that in a safe space in order to think about the complexities and the pitfalls and the dangers and the things you need to keep in mind about the people around you, etc., etc. Right? I think we've developed something of an extremely beautiful experience, both for us as people who facilitate it, who are thinking with you, and for the students. Now we've done 3 years already, and there's already a critical mass of people out there in the field who have gone through these thoughts, gone through these processes, and are bringing that thinking into their work. Whether they're working in international NGOs, or they're working in people's movements, or they're working in theatre, right? The range, or even in academia, right? And we're constantly in conversation with each other about the relevance of this thinking, and we're constantly developing. So it's an invitation to join a community of praxis and thought, not simply to do a module on which you get a mark. So I would really urge you, if you have any interest in understanding, in a critical manner, the way in which political action and citizenship is evolving, is changing in different parts of the world, especially in the global south, but also in the north. We're looking at Occupy, we're looking at the Indignados in Spain, we're looking at Syntagma Square in Greece, we're also looking at the rise of fascism in certain parts of the world, etc. It's an extremely relevant course, and I would urge you to sign up for it. Ciao.